Oh, Black Bean Simpson here. How's everyone doing today? It is almost 11 o'clock a.m. It is January 20th, 2019. Got about an hour before I gotta run to do a clean, a little small business I want to try starting up. Hopefully here in the next several months to a year, I'll have it on the right track and things will be where I want it to be. But I'm probably gonna have to go find a part-time job in the meantime though, because we're gonna have a hard time be paying bills here. But all right, I'm going to be talking about sugar industry. The NPR has released a article talking about how the sugar industry paid off scientists 50 years ago or so. This was written by Camelia Domanowski. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. So, in 1960s, the sugar industry founded research that downplayed the risk of sugar and highlighted the hazards of fat, according to the new published article in JAMA Internal Medicine. The article draws on internal documents to show that the industry group called the Sugar Research Foundation wanted to refute concerns about sugar possibly role in heart disease. The SRF then sponsored new research by Harvard scientists that did just that. The result was published in New England Journal of Medicine in 1967 with no disclosure of the sugar industry funding. Oh, that's just so ethical and moral of you, sugar industry, to sit there and fund things and then quietly not tell anybody that you're the one who helped fund it. So it's no wonder why you got the results that you were wanting to get. I mean, that's just. Are these companies ever going to face consequences? Like severe consequences? You know, I just want to bring a point that if these are the same family that's been running these sugar industries since 1967, in my eyes, what they're doing is no different. I mean, they lied, and they have, in my eyes, they have killed. They have helped participate in murdering a whole lot of people who think that cramming sugar down their throat is perfectly fine. That that is that is my argument on that. And the fact that if this is the same family, the way I look at it as is if I went and robbed a bank, I don't get to keep the money and give it to my kids, and they get to keep the money and do whatever the hell they want with it. No, 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 no. That money gets taken away from me and gets put right back to the bank. Well, that's kind of like what should happen. It should be taken away from these family members if these family members have it still, and then it should be sold or handed off to a different family that has no connection to this family. I mean, this is the consequences things need to face. These these types of huge corporations and companies need to face such severe consequences that they do not want to do it. You know, a lot of these rich people, they don't know what life is without money. So the fact is, if they suddenly have their money generating machine pulled right out underneath them, oh, you can bet your ass that a lot of these they'll just kill themselves. I can guarantee most of these wealthy people who've never lived a day without money would just right off kill themselves because they couldn't handle life. But I also wanted to mention too, a little sidetrack there. I want to mention too about the sugar stuff. There's been studies done on rats, and they have shown that sugar is the most addictive substance on this planet. The most addictive. They took water with cocaine in it, cocaine, and then water with sugar in it, sugar water. So Coke water and sugar water. Well, over time, the majority of the Coke addicted rats stayed to the water, the sugar water, and never went back to that Coke water. Some still continue to go back to that Coke water, but the overall majority went to that sugar water and stuck with it because it was that addictive. It was that much more better. And there's natural reasons on why it's much more addictive. But here's the problem: because it's so addictive, people want it all the time. The one of the problems of the human body is that we can't expel the sugar as fast as that we consume it. Unlike fat we can expel damn near just as fast as we can consume it. It's a great source of energy, and our body has learned how to break it down so we can uh, uh, um, essentially use it as an energy source to for us to keep on going. But let me continue on this article. The sugar founded project in question was a literature review examining a variety of studies and experiments. It suggested there were major problems with all the studies that implicated sugar and concluded that cutting fat out of American diet was the best way to address coronary heart disease. What's interesting too is that like if I had anecdotal experiences where I would watch. I used to live with Asian people, and I was always amazed by Asian people, and they were all very petite people, but the amount of carbs and fat that they consumed was just amazing, and they stayed so small. I was like, how is that possible? I mean, I know their metabolic rates is different than Western people, but I'm amazed by it. Like, how does your body able to consume all that fat and that carbs and stuff like from rice and stuff? Like that's just it's amazing. Like how they're able to essentially expel it off just as fast. Well, it's because our bodies are made to do that. Our bodies all around the world are essentially able to expel fat off of us faster than anything else. Sugar, on the other hand, no. Sugar is already rare in nature. So, being that the fact that sugar is rare, less biology has really had time to really understand how to break down sugar. Unlike fat, fat's been around for forever, probably since the beginning of time, since the first animal could walk. Maybe that's when fat. Maybe it was a fat. Who knows? Fat that rolled right up on the land and thought for itself, and who fucking knows? But the fact is that fat itself has been it's in everything. So it's like anytime that you eat meat, you're eating fat. So it only makes sense that we're able to break down fat faster than sugar when you can't find really sugar in meat or even most plants. You can barely find sugar in. So it's like it makes more sense because you can still find some fats even in plants. But let me continue on here. The author of this new article says that for the past 5 decades, the sugar industry has been attempting to influence the scientific debate over the relatively risk of sugar and fat. It was a very smart thing the sugar industry did because review papers, especially if you get them published in a very prominent journal, tend to shape the overall scientific discussion. Co-author Stanton Glentz. And that is so true. So what's happening now is that these publishing groups have made a name for themselves in a way to maintain certain group statuses. So the way this is how this is the best way I can explain this from what I can understand. If you are part of one of these publishing groups or have been established one of these publishing groups, and it just so happens 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever years ago you were part of research that supposedly solved or came up with some study that now is essentially has made your career, made you who you are. Those people are running those publishing companies or have friends that are running those publishing companies. And they're not so nice on allowing new publication to come in and to change the old stuff. So what's happening now is that you got these companies or these people who specifically know where to bring their new studies, their new quote unquote studies, and get them published through. That's a huge problem. These publishing groups are not meant to be essentially gatekeepers to what they believe in. They're supposed to be gatekeepers to truth. That's it. To facts, peer review, and what is misinformation, what isn't. I don't care if you want to publish misinformation, but just state it as is. Like there's no facts backing this book up, or there has not been a 20-year study or a reliable study, or the study is such a small sample size there needs to be more work done around it or something. There's just none of that. But anyways, I'm going to move on here. Money on the line. In the article published Monday, Arthur Glentz, Kristen Careens, and Laura Smid aren't trying to make the case for a link between sugar and coronary heart disease. Their interest is in the process. They say the document revealed the sugar industry attempt to influence scientific inquiry and debate. The research note that they work under some limitation. We could not interview key actors involved in the historical episode because they have died. They write. Other organizations were also advocating concerns about fat, they note. There is no evidence that the SRF directly edited the manuscript published by the Harvard scientists in 1967, but there is circumstantial evidence that the interest of the sugar lobby shaped the conclusion of the review, the researcher said. Yeah, so what it is that the sugar industry, these people paid off people at the Harvard, or they actually knew people at Harvard. See, that's the problem. When you get so rich and wealthy, you essentially can influence whole list of people and people that you went to school with and stuff. And this is like where the antitrust law needs to come in, and when any time that big companies or someone really extremely wealthy tries to influence a group that's going to essentially release a study that affects millions and millions of people, those people need to face consequences. That's like bribing cops. That's like bribing a judge in my eyes. Like, it's just a different level, a level that most people that listen to me will never reach. Sadly, will never reach to the. I mean, I hope you all or even me gets to a point of having $1 billion. But and from where I'm standing right now, that's almost an impossible, possible attempt. I mean, there's no. Most people become a billionaire either from two things. Either because you were born with a lot of money, or you just so happen to get really fucking lucky. I mean, that's really what it is. It's those two things. There's not many people you can be like, look how successful and hard-working they are, and they made billions of dollars. No. They worked hard. I'm not going to say they didn't work hard, but they got really lucky. They got really lucky getting that billions. They would have made hundreds of thousands of dollars if they didn't get that luck, probably. But with that luck, they made them billions. They just happen to know that right person, happen to be right there at the right time. It's all. I think success to that extent is luck. It's the luck of the draw, essentially. Not everybody gets to become a billionaire. Not every hard worker or family members that have had so many hard workers ever been a billionaire. It's been more poor people than billionaires. So anyways, let me continue on here. My little tangent rant there. But so for one thing, there's motivation and intent. In 1954, the researchers note that the president of SRF gave a speech describing a great business opportunity. If Americans could persuade to eat lower fat diet for the sake of their health, they would need to replace the fat with something else. American per capita sugar consumption could go up by a third. Wow, that's a lot of fucking money. But in the 60s, SRF became aware of the floating reports that the sugar is less desirable dietary source of calories than the other carbohydrates, as John Hickson, SRF Vice President and Director of Research, put it in one document. He recommended that the industry fund its own studies, then we can publish the data and refute our directors. The next year, after several scientific articles were published suggesting a link between sclerosis and coronary heart disease, the SRF approved the literature review project. It wound up paying approximately $50,000 in today's dollar for research. One of the researchers was the chairman of Harvard Public Health Nutrition Department and an ad hoc member of SRF board. A different standard of different studies. Glantz, Kierine, and Schmidt say many of the articles examined in the review were hand-selected by SRF, and it was implied that the sugar industry would expect them to be critiqued. In a letter, SRF Hickson said the organization particular interest was an elevating study focused on carbohydrates in the form of sucrose. We are well aware, and one of the scientists replied, and will cover this as well as we can. The project would taking longer than expected because more and more studies were being released that suggested sugar might be linked to coronary heart disease. But it was finally published in 1967. Hickson was certainly happy with the results. Let me assure you that this was quite what we had in mind, and we look forward to the appearance in print. He told one of the scientists. The review of minimized the significance of research that suggested sugar could play a role in the coronary heart disease. In some cases, the scientists alleged investigators to incompetence or flawed methodology. It was always appropriate to question the validity of individual studies, Karine told the Bloomberg via email, but she says the author applied to a different standard to different studies, looking very critical at research that implicated sugar and ignoring problems with studies that found dangers in fat. So essentially, by the sounds of it, they had a bunch of studies, and rather than doing the exact same methodology to each study to see the outcome, they changed. They changed how they would do things. Like if they were trying to find out what sugar levels will do to a group of people, and then you had like 5 different groups of people, and then you took and you gave one group 50 milligrams, another group 50 grams, another group 50 ounces, another group 50 pounds, right? It's essentially that. I know that's a little extreme, but and then essentially you would see the difference. Well, that's not what was happening by the sounds of it. It sounds like they were changing things up. They were like, instead of, well, it doesn't say, so I'm only speculating essentially here, but they changed something up rather than having different levels of sugar or whatever. They had that, but then they added something like, well, you also ate meat, whereas you just eat. You're a vegan. You're a meat eater, and you're a vegan. Well, you can't have that. You got to have groups of people that are pretty much sharing the same types of foods, if that's the case, and then you're giving them the exact same levels of the sugar or whatever that you're giving them. But let me move on here. The epidemiological, I don't know if that's how you pronounce that word, epidemiological studies of sugar consumption, which took a pattern of health and disease of the real world. We dismiss for having too many possible factors getting in the way. Experimental studies were dismissed for being too dissimilar to real life. One study that found a health benefit when people ate less sugar, more vegetables, was dismissed because the dietary change was not feasible. Another study in which rats were given a diet and low fat and high sugar was rejected because such diets are rarely consumed by man. Yeah, there's like really almost impossible to do low fats and then high sugars. That's not. That's like someone that's not like, it's just pretty much eating sugar. I mean, that's all you're using. But anyways, the Harvard research then turned to studies that examine risk of fat, which include the same kind of epidemiological studies that had dismissed when it came to sugar. Citing few studies, characteristics had no quantitative results, as Karine Glantz and Schmidt put it. They concluded that cutting out fats was no doubt the best dietary intervention to prevent coronary heart disease. Yeah. And the statement that Sugar Association, which evolved out of SRF, said it is challenging the comment on events from so long ago. We acknowledge that the Sugar Research Foundation should have exercised greater transparency in all of its research activities. However, the studies in question were published. Founding disclosures and transparency standards were not the norm they are today, the association said. Generally speaking, it is not only unfortunate that a disservice that the industry funded research and is branded as tainted. The statement continues. What is often missing from the dialogue is that industry funded research have been informative and addressing key issues. The document in question are 5 decades old, but the larger issue at the moment, as Maureen Nestle note in commentary in the same issue of JAMA Internal Medicine. Is it true? Is it really true that the food companies deliberately set out to manipulate research in their favor? Yes, it is. And practice continues. In 2015, the New York Times obtained an email revealing Coca-Cola cozy relationship with sponsors research who were conducting studies aimed at minimizing the effect of sugar drinks on obesity. Even more recently, the Associated Press obtained emails showing how a candy trade association funded and influenced studies to show that children who eat sweets have healthier body weight than those who do not. Wow. As for the article author who dug up the documents found around this finding, they offer two suggestions for the future. Policymaking committees should consider giving less weight to food industry funding studies. Yes. They also call for the new research into any ties between added sugar and coronary heart disease. Yes. And like I said, these people need to face consequences. The fact that these people are literally, like I said, cozying up together. I mean, what? There needs to be like some antitrust laws against this shit. These people are so wealthy that they can essentially convince whole mass of people that their product is healthy when in fact it is not. So people will consume it all actual proportion of what they should drink it at or what they should consume it at. So if it's okay if it is found to be healthy to drink like say 4 ounces of pop a day, all right, but yet you're serving 16-ounce bottles, and you're not telling no one that 16 ounces there's a high chance that you can get coronary heart disease, but at 4 ounces you'll be perfectly fine. That's the thing here. I mean, like at what point are these people going to get consequences? And I'm not talking about fines. These fine bullshit is it's getting ridiculous. These families need to have their businesses yanked from them. Just like if I was a robber and I went in and I stole a bunch of money, my family doesn't get to keep that money. They're essentially stealing money from people by lying to people, by continuing to manipulate and deceive people. That's the only way that they can be as wealthy as they are. Because if it was back in the 60s that was told that the sugar was going to actually kill you, and there would have been all this money that would have been funded towards sugar stuff, or at least sugar wouldn't have been subsidized probably. That's another thing. Like sugar has been subsidized heavily by the government. Well, the question is well, since it's actually bad for you, why is the government going to continue to subsidize something that's actually creating a huge health epidemic that we've never seen? Sugar is not found naturally, like I said. It's just not found naturally, and I'm sorry, it's found naturally, but it's not found naturally in high levels, in high amounts. Unless you like go find a sugar cane. And even then, like you're still talking about a sugar cane has less sugar than an actual candy bar. That's how much sugar gets pumped into these fucking things. It's crazy. If you like this podcast, please like and subscribe. If you didn't like this podcast, please still like and subscribe. Comment down below for suggestions, comments, say what's up. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye.